Russian President Vladimir Putin has held talks with his Chinese counterpart over the Korean Peninsula a day after U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited the Chinese capital. The two sides discussed some vital issues of the international agenda, including the settlement of the situation on the Korean Peninsula, Russia's official Tass news agency reported, quoting a Kremlin statement on a telephone conversation between the two leaders. According to Chinese media reports, President Xi Jinping said China and Russia firmly supported each other in safeguarding sovereignty, security and development interests at both sides, adding that the two nations have been working hard to defend peace and stability of the region and the world. China last week hosted the summit of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO). Putin and Xi expressed satisfaction over the event's outcome. On Friday, the Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement calling for a swift removal of all unilateral sanctions against North Korea in the wake of the summit between the U.S. and North Korean leaders. "We are certain that modification of the UN Security Council's sanctions against North Korea can and must become one of the most important components of normalization in the region," Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova said. As far as the unilateral sanctions against North Korea are concerned, those which were introduced by a number of countries in bypass of the UN Security Council and even in addition to its sanctions, our attitude is well known. It is negative. We are for the fastest cancellation of all such unilateral restrictions, in particular, the so-called secondary, extraterritorial sanctions, she added. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo visited Beijing on Thursday, 2 days after the historic talks between U.S. President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo shakes hands with Chinese President Xi Jinping as they pose for a photograph at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on June 14, 2018. Photo by AFP. Pompeo stressed that tough sanctions will remain in place against North Korea until its complete denuclearization. The U.S. Secretary of State said President Trump has been incredibly clear about the sequencing of denuclearization and relief from the sanctions. Pompeo said step-by-step sequencing meant that denuclearization will take place first, and will then be followed by sanctions relief. The statement issued at the end of last week's Kim-Trump summit provided no details as to when North Korea would renounce its nuclear weapons or how the dismantling might be verified. Pompeo welcomed Beijing's important and positive role in promoting denuclearization in the Korean Peninsula and the successful convening of the historic meeting. China also called the summit important and great start. Of course, it takes a process to resolve the Korean Peninsula nuclear issue. We hope the United States and the DPRK will implement the consensus reached at the summit, continue to make concert efforts, and have positive interactions, said China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi at a joint press conference with Pompeo on Thursday. Wang underlined that the Korean Peninsula's nuclear issue cannot be resolved without the support and participation of the relevant parties. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi prepare to leave after a joint press conference at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing on June 14, 2018. Photo by AFP. China is willing to maintain close communication with the relevant parties including the United States and the DPRK, and continue playing its due part in the denuclearization and establishment of a peace mechanism on the Korean Peninsula, he added. North Korea has been under a raft of crippling UN sanctions since 2006 over its nuclear tests as well as multiple rocket and missile launches. Pyongyang has firmly defended its military program as a deterrent against the hostile policies of the US and its regional allies, including South Korea and Japan.